Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Kingfisher Knits podcast. My name is Madeline and I'm talking to you from my home in Zurich where I live with my family. I'm originally from the UK, but I've been living here in Switzerland for several years. Excuse me. It's been a while since I last spoke to you, so I want to say hello again. I've been on holiday with my family. We were in Italy, where it was very nice for most of the time, but extremely hot for the final week. We were in Rome, which is where my husband is from, and they said that it was the hottest week on record ever. And it was a bit of a struggle. I don't deal with heat fantastically, but I've improved over the years, as my husband is a lover of all things hot. But it was 40 degrees Celsius every day for several days. Anyway, so I'm kind of glad to be back home in Zurich, also for the fact that it's much cooler. I apologise for the noise outside. I feel like I say this every time. They are now supposed to have finished all the construction work that they've been doing for over a year across the road from us. And they are again digging up the tarmac outside that house for, I don't know, the umpteenth time. Before I forget, more admin. We have a Ravelry group on Ravelry, of course. Dear oh dear, out of practice. Which is the Kingfisher Knits group on Ravelry. And there you will find the show notes for the podcast. I try to put them up as soon as possible. Normally I upload the video ASAP and the show notes follow shortly after. That's the general plan. And I will put down in the description box below the links of where you could find me on Instagram and my website and the like. I also want to say thank you for coming back and watching another episode. If you're a previous viewer, and if you are just checking me out for the first time, thank you very much. It's been a real wonderful process to start this podcast, and I'm enjoying it very, very much. I wanted to make a quick reminder to people who have been knitting my Patronus shawl. So that Cal finished up quite a while ago, and I doled out the prices, I think, on episode 6. But as I said, I'd left the chatter thread open. Occasionally some people are popping things in there, and also people are posting their finished shawls on Instagram as and when they do that. I'm probably going to wait till the end of the summer, and then I'm going to draw a couple of other little prizes, pattern prizes and the like, both from Instagram and from the chatter thread. So that's all the admin that I had. I'm looking down at my notes as though I've written anything. I've written nothing. This is really like the first opportunity I've had since I got back from holiday, and I wanted to sit down and record something, so we'll see how messy it is. I'm feeling it's going to be very messy because I didn't write any notes. So I normally start with finished objects, and I actually have 2. Yay! Feels like forever since I've said that. As you know, I have been finishing things that I wasn't able to show you, but now I have 2 things to show you. So the first thing is something that you've never seen before. So these have been cast on and off without ever being shown on the podcast. They are housed in my beautiful drawstring bag, which Vicky of Vicky Bird Designs made for me in a swap. My original swap package that I sent to her never arrived, so I made another bag and sent that off to her, and thankfully that did arrive. So I have made a pair of socks using the Regia Perfect Cotton. So this is the tag. This particular colour, of course there's a sticker over the colour, looks like 2975. Anyway, I will try and look at it. I will when I put this on. I haven't even put this on Ravelry yet, just because I cast them on for my holiday and I've been away. But I will put them on Ravelry, and I will have the colour code there. So when that's linked in the show notes, the information will be there should you wish to make exactly the same one. For those of you who don't know about Regia Perfect and are interested, I wanted to grab another ball I have of the wool blend. Just to show you so you know what it looks like. So when I'm going to say a couple of things, it'll make more sense. So it comes as a 100 gram ball. I don't remember how much yardage you get for it, but it's definitely enough to make a pair of socks, even for a man, because I've made my father, who has UK size 10, 11 feet, I made him a pair of socks out of a ball of these. I used up all the yarn. I did them toe up to make sure that I would use up all the yarn, and they came to a decent height, so they were a good pair of socks. And so when you get this ball, the point of this yarn is that you can make 2 identical socks. And you see this yellow yarn. So what you're meant to do, if you're knitting them cuff down, one at a time, you start from the middle of the ball. So you take this first thread and you pull it, and that will come from the middle of the ball. You pull out all of the yellow. There's a lot. I don't really know why they have so much, to be honest. They don't really need it, but anyway. There's an awful lot of yellow yarn. You pull that all out. You cut when you first start with the colour, so the colour, proper colour of the sock, not the yellow, and then you cast on and you knit the other one. Then, when you finished your sock, you wind up all the rest of the yarn, which is the colour of the sock basically, until you get to the next yellow strand. You pull off all that yellow strand, you cut it when the next section of a yarn for the sock starts, and you start cast on there, and you will get 2 perfectly matching socks. Now, I wanted to knit mine cuff down, and 2 at a time. So I had to wind off from the middle. Let me think, how did I do it? So I wound it into a cake, winding from the middle, so that means the bit where you should start the cuff was in the middle of the cake. I don't like knitting from the middle of cakes, and I anyway needed 2 cakes. So I then wound off 2 cakes from the outside of that cake. So I ended up with cakes where I could start from the outside of the cake, 2 cakes for perfectly matching socks. That's a lot of introduction, but it's a pretty cool yarn. Some people probably don't care and aren't interested, but for people who might be, I thought it was worth giving a proper explanation of what that yarn is and what it looks like. So here are my socks. So this is my first time knitting cotton socks. It's my second time using the Perfect, but this is a different Perfect. So the other one, as you can see, was wool, but it also just had stripes around the cuff and then a completely plain foot. And this interested me because it was also patterned all the way through. And you can see that they match perfectly. There is an ever so slight difference on this side, you can see, and I counted and they're off by 6 stitches. And what I did to be really annoying, so sometimes when people want to make perfectly matching socks and they're starting, cuff down, they will go to the point of a colour change, make their slip knot there, and then do your long tail cast on, but then you get a ridge around the top of that colour. You can't do that in this yarn unless you want that to be the yellow yarn, which I don't think would look very nice. So to be sure that I had was going to do my slip knot and therefore my cast on stitches at exactly the same place, or as good as I could, all I had with me were my knitting needles. I didn't have a tape measure or anything. So from the point that I cut the yellow yarn off, I then took the end of the yarn, I made a length as long as these needles, because I knew there'd be plenty of yarn. I didn't care if my tail would end up being more than I needed to cast on my stitches. And I made my slip knot at that point, so I had exactly the same amount of yarn. It's a bit over the top. I don't care actually that much about things being absolutely perfect. It's fine for me if they're a row or 2 off for self-striping and self-patterning and the like, but this is the perfect yarn, so I wanted to make them match. So here they are. I will comment a little bit about the yarn in a second, but I did my first ever garter heel. I have a book which had a garter heel in, so the very first time I started knitting socks, I'd seen a garter heel and always thought that looked like a nice idea, especially for maybe like a squishy pair of bed socks. But as you probably all know, Amina of the Knitting Expat podcast has been doing garter heels a lot recently, and I got to the point of doing the heel. I was out and about on my holiday, and I thought, well, yeah, it would be nice not to have to purl right now. So I did a garter heel. So I did the usual German short row heel with a mini heel flap in there. And they came out really nice. They are nice. I put these on. They are nice. They do fit. Because this is cotton, and when you stretch it, you can even see now it holds its shape. It doesn't spring back. This is cotton blended with both polyester and nylon, if I remember correctly. Let me see here. What does it say? This is 10% polyester, 18% nylon, and 72% cotton. There is a stretch to it, even as you're knitting with it, which is meant, although it was different than wool, it was still fairly pleasant to knit with. It wasn't like solid rock hard cotton. Anyway, so I made these pretty tight. I think that this is a 42 stitch. 42, that's crazy. 52. It's 52 or 54 stitches cast on. And I find actually that the bit which limits me is the cast on. So it's almost slightly too tight because it's quite nice and snug, the rest on my leg and what have you, but I can just get them on because of the cast on, which, as you can see, limits more than the stretch of the sock. They're very nice on. I wonder if they're a tad short. I'm not quite sure how that happened because I normally measure them. But I'm interested to see how they wear, given that they're cotton, and how they feel. It's really nice and plump. It actually feels plumper as you're knitting with it than the normal Regia yarn, at least the Regia Perfect. I don't have any. No, I have knit with Arnie and Carlos Regia design line, and that was just as plump as this. So I was very apprehensive about knitting with this yarn, and it was a relatively pleasant experience. It was a bit strange. Sometimes it felt a bit odd. It wasn't wool, but given that I was very glad to have this project with me when I was away because it was very hot, and in the end I hardly picked up wool projects. Not unless I was in an air-conditioned car, basically, did I pick up any of the wool projects because it was just too hot. So yeah, pair of socks for me. And I left on the little progress creeper I was using. This is one of these little lovely stitch markers which I actually put onto one of these light bulb safety pins, and this is from Jessie Marie Makes on Etsy. So that was a cast on. I did have quite a bit of yarn left over, but I knew I would because I wanted to knit them top down, because in order to make sure that you use all of the patterning, they have a lot of this plain colour at the very end, so that depending on how long your feet are, that will just increase that section. And I didn't want a very long cuff. This is a cuff about the length of my foot. I certainly wouldn't want a longer cuff than that. That's just not how I like my socks. I normally do a shorter cuff, but I wanted to use as much of the pattern as possible, and in the end I didn't even quite get to the green. I was just about to get to the green, which would have finished this part of the sock as is shown in the picture there. So I've got quite a bit of yarn left. I'll have to weigh it and see if it would be enough to be of use in another pair of socks for my daughter or something. So we'll have to see. Oh, I just closed that bag and didn't put the stuff back in it. And I knit these on 2.25mm Knit Pro Zings. I have an odd relationship with these needles. I really quite like them. I chose them because they have, for this particular project, because they have that slippy steel tip, but they have a slightly sort of brushed metal part to the rest of the needle, and I thought that would be good given that I've got cotton. But they don't have the best join, these ones, and this yarn, which is not tightly plied, it started to unply fairly easily. I just felt like it was getting caught there all the time. I'm not sure if there's anything I can do about this particular one. I know some people say that they can file them a little bit with a nail file, but there's a real big gap between plastic and metal here. So I'm not the biggest fan of my pair of Knit Pro Zings circulars, but yeah. So I took off my cardigan because although it's quite cool here, it's raining and it's very humid. And I've had to close the windows because of all the construction noise, and so I'm actually hot. Anyway, so that was my first finished object, and the second finished object I have to show you, I actually finished before I went away, but I had told you that I wouldn't be able to show it to you in the last podcast because it wasn't blocked yet, and it is the shawl that I was knitting with the yarn, Wonderful Yarn by Trey Liz, and this will be this shawl pattern is now almost in testing. There was a bit of a delay to get everything ready because I was on holiday. I did write up the pattern, and then I'm having it edited, and the timelines just are such that it's not quite in testing yet, but it will be in testing very soon. Testers already have their yarn, and I'm really excited to see their shawls. But I also didn't show it because I hadn't decided the name yet, but I have now. And so this is the Artemis shawl. I will try and hold the whole thing up, but it is quite big. Yes, see? Excuse me while I figure out what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to hold it like this in the sections. So it starts off down here with very few stitches, and it grows in this way. You can see making these arrows of the different colours. I'll tell you which colours they are in a minute. And there is both garter stitch and a simple lace section. This is the lace section here. I'm going to show it like this. The lace section goes here. And then it finishes off, show the whole, it gets quite large. And then it finishes off ending again into a point down here. So it starts with very few stitches. It never gets to a large stitch number again, although there is a decent number of stitches in this middle section here. I show it like that. And then it finishes again with a few stitches at the end. And there is, it's fully I-cord edged all the way around, which is worked as you're working the shawl. And I just want to quickly say, so this is her Zeus base, which is 100% superwash merino single ply. Absolutely lovely to work with. It's a lovely yarn for shawls. This main skein, so this uses up one main skein. This is Warhol on hers, and then 5 20-gram mini skeins. And now we have the test if I can remember the names. So I always get confused if this is Svadhisthana and this Manipura, or the other way around. I'm sorry. It will be in the show notes correctly. This one is Doomy, this turquoise. This is Yarngasm, this mauve, and this is Fight Club, this neon pink. This was such a fun knit. I really enjoyed it, and I've had good response from the testers when they saw the shawl. They were really happy to knit it, and I really hopefully that process will go well, and then the shawl will be released in the near future. And Trailers will be doing yarn kits, and all those details will come later on once everything is stabilized. Is that what I mean? That's not what I mean. Dear oh dear. Very much out of practice. Okay, so I will probably show the shawl off again, maybe with a few more details of how it's worked and exactly any sort of tips I can think of when it comes around to pattern release time. But I really enjoyed doing that, and that moves me on to it's not really dream knitting, it's knitting that's going to happen. And as I finished one design project with Trailers, I'm ready to start another one. So I'm going to be doing a DK weight brioche shawl / wrap. And that's all the details I'm going to give for now. And I did show off this yarn when I received it, but I thought I would show it again now that I'm about to get ready to swatch and cast on. And this is in her Hera base. This is spelled H-E-R-A. I never remember if it's pronounced Era or Hera. And this is Trailers' little labels, ball bands. This is 100% superwash merino DK, 225 meters for 100 grams. And this is the Celine color. It's slightly brightened up by the camera, but this is showing you very nicely the tonality, but it's just ever so slightly darker and perhaps more muted looking. It really looks like a lovely dark denim pair of jeans that have been worn thoroughly. And this will be going in a 2-color brioche project with this color, which is Charlotte. And it's just rainbow pink gloriousness. So I'm really looking forward to getting started on that. Yeah. There will be a little bit of time before I'll be able to show you any work on that, I'm sure. But anyway, not least because it's still summertime here. So that's quite a big project to be working on when it's hot. And so now we're on to whips. I'm going to show you 2 whips today. One is something that I've shown you before, but I have made quite a decent amount of progress on, and that is my not so faded sweater. As you know by now, I'm knitting this out of the Plucky Knitter yarn, which is this one here. It is much more, it's more on the burgundy, so a little bit more pinky purple than is showing up there. I mean, it's a red, but just the colour is not quite. That's better. It's still darker than that. And it's called Strawberry Wine. It's their Oxford base. They don't have the Oxford base, this exact Oxford base anymore. They have Oxford 2.0. This is the original Oxford base. And it's also, but I think the blend is the same. So it's a non-superwash blend of 75-25 merino cashmere. There we go. It's called my Not So Faded Sweater because I'm knitting the So Faded Sweater pattern by Andrea Mowry, all in one colour. And not even a speckled colour, a semi-solid colour. Solid. Almost a solid, this one. Anyway, so when I last showed it to you, this is where my little Sucre Miniatures Progress Keeper was. So that's the sleeve. So I still had quite a long way to go before separating for the sleeves. And I have since separated for the sleeves, and I have knit a decent amount. So I measured it yesterday. So that's how much I've knit down from the underarm. I measured it yesterday and I've knit 6 inches down. I plan to do this the classic sweater style, which I think in the pattern says somewhere between 13 and 14 inches to knit down before you start the ribbing. And I basically knit this in the car while we were on our way down to Rome and back. And I don't knit the whole time because we drive overnight. And so at some point I have to sleep. But I just knit round and around and around in the dark because this is the perfect project for that. One little note on yarn management. So I'm onto my second skein, which is here. And what I did was I got down to under the, to separating the sleeves down here. I knit a few rounds and then I didn't have a scale with me at that point. I looked at how much yarn I had left and I thought, well, I want there to be a little bit left so I can also blend in the next skein when I go to the sleeves. So I took the next skein and I alternated every 2 rounds for, I think, about 10 rounds. This I was doing in the dark in the car. And I'm not entirely happy with how it looks at that point, so I'm probably going to have to do a little bit of clever weaving in of ends when I'm there to make things look a little bit neater. But I know blocking will help too. And I mean, today it's incredibly gloomy outside. I also have a non-natural light on to the side of me because it's so dark. I don't think, even by my eye, this is not a completely solid yarn. There is some tonality to it, but I can't really tell just looking that I changed skeins. And if I fold it in half and look at the bit that I'm looking at now compared to this other bit, they look very similar. So this is why I decided not to alternate skeins the whole project, but just to do a few rounds of blending in when I change skeins. So now I've saved a little nugget here. I will split this in 2 and use that when I go back to do the sleeves to blend it in with the yarn that I'm using there at that point. So I'm happy with that. This is, yeah, basically going to be this is my project when I just don't want to have to think. I just want to pick up something and knit round and around and around. So I'll put that down. Oh, this is in my Cabin Creek Creations bag. I feel like I show it every week. It's lovely. And a beautiful sweater size. And my holiday cast on, apart from the socks, yeah, so I did 2 holiday cast-ons. One is already a finished object. This will be a longer term project, I know, just because also it's fatty yarn and it's not something I cast it on holiday. It's a DK weight yarn and it was very hot. So I did do some progress on some of the cooler evenings when we first arrived, but I didn't get very far. Anyway, this is the yarn I'm using. It's getting totally, completely and utterly blown out. If I make it closer, it's blue, it's purple, more purple than that. You can see it does really have these flecks of like really bright purple, and it's showing you the rest of it is blue, but it is not. I'm just trying to see if I can get it. It's not that blue. It's a lot more purple than that. This is Spell by Hedgehog Fibers. This is their merino base, so 100% superwash merino DK. I think the tag is in here. Let's see. Yes, it is. And this was a whopper skein. Gosh. So this skein is meant to be 115 grams and it was 124 or 123. So So yeah, this is their Merino DK Hedgehog Fibres. And this is the Spell colourway. This is something I just picked up on one of their updates online. And I'm very glad that I did. So it's a beautiful semi-solid, I would say. And I am knitting the Bonbon mitts. These are by Joji Locatelli, and they are in the 5-year anniversary edition of Pom Pom magazine. So I am just knitting these magic loop on 3mm needles, high sharps. And the cuff says to knit, so this is twisted rib, hence why it looks absolutely tiny, so it's lovely and snug. I've already tried it on, it fits fine. This is the smaller size, and I am meant to knit to 4.5 inches, and I think I checked that I'm something like, sorry, those needles are driving me mad. Anyway, I think I'm like not that far off now. So then I can start, I think, increasing for the thumb, and then there's a patterning on the back of the hand as well. It has been interesting knitting only, this is proper twisted rib. So I often think of twisted rib just in my mind. If I'm knitting it for the top of socks, I knit through the back loop, but I do a normal purl stitch. Because, as you can see, I mean, full twisted rib pulls in quite a lot. It is beautiful, and the point for this pattern is that you're making a fairly long cuff, and you can fold it over when you want them to be shorter, depending on what jacket you're wearing or what have you. And so you want that twisted rib effect on the inside, because when you turn it over, if those knit stitches weren't also twisted, then they would look very sloppy compared to the beautifully twisted knit stitches above. So I fully understand why this has to be a proper twisted rib, which is knit one through the back loop, purl one through the back loop. Already knitting one through the back loop doesn't give the best, easiest rhythm for me, but I can do it, and I've done it. I do it on hats quite often, and I've also done it on socks. I think it's beautiful. Purling through the back loop is not fun. So for those of you who are interested, I did a little Instagram video while I was away. So if you go to my Instagram, Kingfisher Knits account, and scroll down, you'll see it's me working on this bright purple yarn. So I knew that what's called Eastern style knitting, or Russian, I think it's also called Eastern style. Anyway, the Russian purl stitch. There's also the Russian knit stitch. If you knit that way, you end up with twisted stitches. So I don't know exactly, but if you always knit Russian style, both your knits and purls, then you don't end up with twisted stitches at the end, basically, because you untwist them in the way you work them the next time round. Don't quote me on that, but there is something to that. But I knew that the Russian purl stitch and knit stitch makes a twisted stitch, and if here I'm knitting always on the right side, so if I'm always purling with the Russian purl stitch, it's always twisted. And I'm finding that much easier to work, because it means I don't have to, you still have the change of sort of pace between doing a knit and a purl, and I'm still knitting one through the back loop. But if I'm purling, I don't have to do that thing with the purling through the back loop where you've got to twist your work to get your needle, basically the wrong way through the stitch so that you can then purl it. It's all worked through the front loop. And I've been finding that much, much easier. So I did a little video on it, which you can see at the very end of the video. I do it slow motion. Otherwise, you can look it up yourself. And I can just tell you after trying it that it does work, and it does produce a twisted stitch, because if you look on the inside, my knit stitches are still twisted. So there was one place where I was starting to do it, and I think I did it a little bit wrong. So there are a couple of non-perfect worked stitches, but it does work. Once I got the knack of it, it works lovely. So I do think now that I'm back in cooler climes, this will be sort of a good project to work on that's small and relatively portable. But we'll see, because once I get into the bit where there's a chart and what have you, I'm not sure exactly how fast that will go. But that's fine. And it's living in the project bag that I made myself, my first ever hand-sewn project bag, which is made out of meant to be a vintage style tea towel that I had, and this beautiful teal zip. So that is everything for finished objects. And sorry, I'm trying to find somewhere to put this. finished objects and whips. And in stash enhancement, I don't have actually any stash enhancement. What I have is a lovely package arrived from the club that I signed up for from Fondant Fibre. So this club was for June, July, August. So this is the July installment. I don't think it's now the 10th of August, so I don't think I'm ruining it for anybody if I show it. If I am, if you're in the Fondant Fibre club, this sort of yarn bag and yarn club that she was doing, and you don't want to know, I'm afraid you have to look away. But the bag arrived while I was away. It is absolutely beautiful. It's very much that I would say within the style of Fondant Fibre. It's a really good size bag. So I would actually say, like, I'm not sure if this would be for a full sweater, but it's easy 2 skeins without even a slightest problem, and they would be kind of swamped in there. So probably it's a 3 skein shawl bag, and possibly a small sweater. And it's just lovely. I'm slightly, due to its colour, I'm a little bit worried about having it and using it, because I have kids and we go all over the place when I have to knit, and I don't have sort of super precious project bags, at least not yet, that I wouldn't, sure, I mean, if I'm out in the park and I have a dark one, I wouldn't, throw it on the floor, a light one, I wouldn't throw it on the floor. I'd try and keep it, in my other bag or what have you. But this, I think, could be a potential problem. So I have, if you maybe remember, the lovely Deb of Fondant Fibre gifted me an extra skein when I placed an order with her a few months ago, and she said I could use it as a prize. Sorry, I could use it as a prize for the podcast or as yarn support. I'm very much leaning towards using that for yarn support. I have already been swatching out a couple of ideas, and I kind of feel. I felt like if I didn't give that away, I should give something else of Fondant Fibre away. So possibly this could be a very special prize at some point in the future. I have to wait and see how I feel about it. I think it's really, really, really lovely though. And together with that, it had a package I haven't even opened yet, which has a cherry bakewell green tea and a Fondant Fibre organic lip balm vanilla honey in there. So that was a really, really lovely package to come home to. When we got back from our journeys, something beautiful to open up. So I do believe that that's everything that I had to show you this time around. It will not be so long before I manage to talk to you again. It could be sooner than 2 weeks. It'll just have to see how our schedule works out. Now we're back. You always get back from holiday and you think, oh yeah, everything's doable, everything's easy. You have that time to relax and get out of your routine and out of all the busy life, and suddenly you think you have time for everything. So I am aware that I will have less time than I think I'm going to have. But I got a lot of knitting planned, and I really look forward to being able to share that with everybody. And so I just hope that everybody, wherever you are still having a good summer, if it's summer where you are, and if not, I hope you're still having a great time of year. And I will hopefully get my show notes up as soon as I possibly can. Sorry that I've been a little bit rusty today. I mean, I'm never your wonderful, perfect, smooth podcaster. So I think you know that now. If you're watching this, you don't expect that from me. Anyway, so I will get this up onto YouTube, and I look forward to getting to talk to you all again. Have a wonderful time.